7. May 1998. Even by the time she'd turned 7, she already possessed a Sisyphean pneuma of the world-weary, a carrying of a burden well beyond her lot. At such a young age, she did not have the words or even the meaning of what formed in her developing mind. That which may have been simply kismet was to her still a map to be deciphered, a path to be chosen and trodden. And yet part of her knew she'd have to make the pilgrimage alone, as the girl who would like one day to become woman. It was easier for her brother. He still had Dad, a celestial anchor of sorts for navigating the waters of boyhood. Leah would have to chart the course without a solid visage in her mind, rather an El Dorado that could have looked like anything for all she knew. There was Nan, of course, whom she loved dearly. However, the generational gulf between them was one that the two of them struggled to bridge at times. There was something decidedly masculine about Leah's grandmother. She smoked feverishly for one, a trait that often triggered quite a turn of mood for her brother Lockie, and Leah definitely hated the smell too. Aside that one vice, her Nan loved a beer on a Saturday afternoon, tuning the radio to whatever sporting event was taking place. It didn't matter what. It was the plight of the Goulburn girl, perhaps, that a peculiar ruggedness cloaked the hardy residents of that hinterland town, and while Leah had the tight bond typically shared by grandparent and grandchild, her Nana wasn't someone she aspired to emulate. To gather her wisdom, the morals to her fables, these things were fine. It was just that Leah could never see herself getting so cranky simply because the Canberra Raiders had won a game that she'd placed a bet on. The road between Goulburn and Braidwood changed names, depending upon which way one travelled, and it was every second Friday that Ruth would make the hour's drive to pick up her grandkids from school and whisk them back to her house on Kinghorn Street. For Leah and Lockie, it was their second home, and most of the time they wouldn't have it any other way. Nan was looser with the rules than Dad, and Goulburn offered a mildly livelier scene than the quiet home in Major's Crossing. Other times, though, when the exhaustion of the school week overcame them, they'd complain of homesickness, that Dad was just at home doing nothing. It wasn't until the pair were much older that they realised these weekends were the only chance Charles got to upkeep the many other facets of his life to provide for his two young children, or that grandmothers were a treasure only for childhood, that would be lost sooner than one could ever want. It was true that it took a village to raise a child, and Ruth delivered a city for her son. The flurried silhouette of her brother was quickly distancing itself from her, so Leah swung the plastic grocery bag over her shoulder and jolted off the footpath into the laneway. If she was going to beat Lockie home, she'd have to try a shortcut. The asphalt was dotted with puddles from the day's earlier drizzle, but now the sun had returned for a twilight encore, illuminating the cold afternoon with brilliant shades of orange and pink. Winter foretold of its arrival, with its chilled tendrils in the early sundown, for it was barely 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the night would soon be undeniable. Leah panted as her feet pounded the ground, and wooden fences flowed past her as she ran. A flock of cockatoos screeched overhead, and the cold pricked her skin as it mingled with the heat of her core that lay trapped in a thermal jacket. She made it to the backyard of Nan's house and flew down the side, almost tripping on the garden hose in the process. But there he was, her brother, arms akimbo, standing triumphant on the front porch. "Beat you." "Don't care," she snipped, dropping the grocery bag. "I even had 2 bags to carry." "I said I don't care." It was difficult for her to win any sort of verbal scuffle with her brother. He was almost 3 years older than her, nearly double digits. She just wasn't smart enough. Leah hated being the younger sibling, always chasing, always trailing. She bent to readjust the carton of milk and the packet of biscuits before standing upright with a grin and pointing at him. "First the worst." "Nope, Zero the hero." Nana finally caught up, rummaging through a set of house keys with a bag on each arm. "You kids are too quick, leaving your grandmother in the dust." "Nan, Lockie teased me." "Leah, can you please fix that bag? The chips are getting crushed." "I said Lockie teased me." "Nobody tease anybody," said Ruth. "Lockie, be kind to your sister. She's still little." They bustled inside and set about warming the place for the evening ahead. On went the electric blankets, the radiator that sat in the old unused fireplace, and into the beanbag chairs went brother and sister with the ABC cartoons blaring from the television set. It was all baby shows until 6, so said Lockie. Leah agreed with him to save face, but secretly loved them. Still little indeed. Then it was The Simpsons and Neighbours, grown-up shows. Sale of the Century came on at 7, and that meant they'd begin winding down for bed. The two shared a room when they stayed at Nan's, and Ruth had long grown to accept that the kids would fall asleep later than usual on these nights. The temptation to chatter was too much. And besides, there was no school in the morning. Leah nuzzled into her beanbag and inhaled the smells of garlic and onions as her grandmother began cooking dinner. It was these moments, wrapped in the warmth of a familiar place, while the night was kept safely outside, that she would ache longing for in her adulthood. How could she have understood the importance of this mundane Friday night until hindsight had a chance to make entrance? "Who's playing tonight, Nan?" asked Lockie. "Newcastle and Norths, mate," she called from the kitchen. "Boo, Knights! When are the Sharks?" "Tomorrow. Broncos. We'll get 'em. Get 'em back for the grand final." "Let's hope so, Lock. They've won their last 3, so we can be confident." "Gosh, Nan, I know." None of it made sense to Leah. She just listened with her thumb in her mouth. Everyone told her to stop. "You're too old to do that now," although many gave her lenience, given the unusual setup of their family life. "Can we stay up and watch Sharks?" she asked. "No, Leah, they're tomorrow," said Lockie. "We'll see, love. Might be a bit late for you." Ruth understood what she had meant. Leah didn't care about the game, just the chance to stay up a bit later. She heard the tap of the wooden spoon on the edge of the pan, and Nan's hands clapped together. "Well, there's some washing out on the line, guys. I'll be outside for a moment if you need me." Leah wasn't really watching the television, but staring vacantly through it. It had been a long week at school, and she was tired. She listened to her brother noisily chewing away at a bowl of chips, the sizzling of the meat that slowly cooked on the stove, the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. The screen door presently opened again, and a rush of cold shocked her back from reverie. "Would you kids like to see something?" called Nan from the back door. Leah leapt up immediately. "Let's go, Lockie." "No, thank you." She thought nothing of his response and went out into the backyard, aware of the cold concrete steps under her bare feet. Nan was standing next to the clothesline with her eyes to the sky, which had turned to a deep indigo washed with the barest strip of amber on the western horizon. Lockie didn't want to. "That's okay, love. Take a look there. What can you see?" She gazed past Nan's pointed finger to a bright star that watched silently from its astral perch. There wasn't much to be said of it. It was a star, all right. The only one that she could see at this time, but it was still early. "That," said Nan, "is the evening star." Leah was puzzled. "Aren't they all evening stars?" Nan laughed. "You're gorgeous, girl. I suppose you're right. It's what we call a wandering star. But it's not moving." "It is, just very slowly. It's a planet. That's Venus. So small." "That's just because it's very far away. But it's always the first star you'll see at night." Leah stood and looked, her grandmother's hand resting on her shoulder. "When you see Venus," her Nan said, "you might like to think it's Mum looking down on you." "Is that because Mum's far away now?" "Yes, love. It's just a nice thing you can think about when you see the night sky. She loved you endlessly." Leah felt strange. She'd never known her mother. She was aware that Mum had been around when she was a baby, but that was far too early in her life for her to remember anything about her. To her, it had always been her father and brother, and Nana lived in a different house. It was peculiar to hear that someone she couldn't remember had loved her so much. Venus, Mum watching out for us. She'd remember to tell her brother later.